Hi there. So glad to be back with you, Matt. I'm Nicole Brewster. I'm the president and CEO of Renforth Resources. We trade on the CSE, RFR, and OTC QB as RFHRF. As you know, Renforth has several assets in the province of Quebec. Our flagship is our Parbec open pit gold deposit contiguous to the Canadian Malartic mine, sitting on the Cadillac Break, which is Canada's most productive gold structure. And we have our very exciting Surimeau district property, which is 260 square kilometers with 6 different polymetallic occurrences, several gold occurrences, and most importantly, Victoria West, which is a 5 kilometer long VMS ultramafic, which gives us nickel, copper, and zinc. And we drilled it earlier this year and we're awaiting results. So lots going on. We're funded. We're being patient with the lab. We're slow to get our assays, but they're coming. So happy to talk to you today about what's happening with Renforth.
Well, Nicole, welcome back. You know, it's February since February. We spoke in February, a long time ago. So I wanted a quick catch up with you because obviously the market's kind of a funny place at the moment. And given that you've got your gold project and you've kind of got your battery metals project, I wanted to catch up and see how you're playing the market. So if you don't mind, can we start with Parbec? What's happening there? It seems very slow. You put out a few results, but we're not seeing the kind of big picture coming together because you were very clear about your strategy with me last time there, right? So just remind people what the strategy is and tell us what you've done since February on Parbec.
Fair enough. So the strategy hasn't changed. As we talked about in February, we drilled a total of more than 15,000 meters between the winter and the fall last year. 48 drill holes, I believe, offhand, but in any case, 10 still to report to the public. We don't have complete assays for them as yet. We have partial assays. I expect we will complete all those holes before the end of September. 2 tranches, probably, of press releases. And that'll bring the disclosure to a close on Parbec. Parbec, I still regard as an asset we will likely monetize. As a junior exploration company, we explore, we prove the asset, and then we monetize the asset. And we would deploy those funds towards, proving up other assets. Same thing we did with New Alger. We sold New Alger. We put the money into Parbec. History should repeat itself. However, COVID has just destroyed the lab turnaround in Canada, and we're waiting on assays. Which kind of puts a spanner in the works, right? Like it slows everybody down, but that should resolve itself shortly. Surimeau.
But before we Nicole, let me ask a few questions before you jump into Surimeau, okay? Parbec. The idea there is to do enough work on it to make it interesting enough to some of your neighbors. Must be right. Some big names, some big balance sheets there, and as a bolt-on to one of their projects, that's way more interesting than, say, you trying to develop it. So that's why you say you will monetize it. That's what you mean, isn't it?
That's what I mean. I mean, going forward to become a developer, very small-scale producer is not in the best interest of Renforth shareholders. It would be a dilutive trend. It would be a dilutive process any way you cut it. But the asset has ore sitting on it. It's got, it's at surface. It's easily exploited, especially by people which have that expertise. We're good at boots on the ground exploration, not building a mine. The program we did had 3 targets. It was meant to infill holes within the model, which were literally section lines that had not been drilled. We did that. Or spaces between, shallow and deep holes, just to resolve the distance. That has impact on a resource because it allows you to carry the mineralization through what had been a gap. It shows continuity. We were doing some down dip testing, meaning drilling deeper holes is what down dip testing means. We did that. We got gold, which is great. And then we also, most interestingly, were twinning the historic holes. These were left out of the May 2020 resource. 13,000 meters worth of data was left out of the May 2020 resource. So that resource was only based on 27,000 meters of drill data at best. And we're going to bring 15,000 plus the old 13,000 back to bear. So we've done a good job on Parbec. We've opened the door to a lot of drill targets that, say we don't monetize Parbec today, say we end up monetizing Parbec in 6 months or whatever, it'll sit in the ground nicely. The gold won't rust. And we could always go back and drill some of our additional targets, but that is not our plan. It is to let it sit until such time as we monetize it. And in the interim, we do have other financial assets we could draw on without diluting shareholders.
Okay, so that's really clear, because I want to be able to kind of park this up as a future monetization event, but as an outlier at the same time, because Surimeau is what you want to talk about and what I want to focus on too. So once you've got these assay results, and you incorporate all this drill data together and say, right, that's enough for one of these big guys looking in to get a very good sense of what's here. The grades are good so far, and we don't need to spend another dime on that. Park it up, right?
Right.
De minimis costs.
Declining returns for Renforth.
For sure.
Right?
Perfect. Oh. Okay, so that's the plan with that. Real simple. I also noticed you divested something to O3 Mining as well, which again, is that just clearing the decks?
Just clearing the decks. O2 owned 80%, O3 rather, owned 80% of that asset. We would have been a participating 20%, not in control, having to contribute financially. There was really... We sold it to them for the residual interest for an amount of money and some shares. So we're still exposed to any future success they may have at that property with the equity.
Okay, fine. Right, so let's get on to the main course here, which is Surimeau. Okay, so polymetallic VMS should be interesting. I look at your share price. No one's paying attention. Why is that?
Few things. There's no data out there. The only data in the public domain is 3 little baby, we could call them pack sack. It wasn't pack sack drilling, but it was very small scale drill holes, just plonked in the ground based on visuals on surface, really. Wildly successful. We drilled right into sulfides and stayed in sulfides, and then we broke the drill. That's where it wasn't successful. But we got nickel. We got nickel, copper, zinc. Along with the visible mineralization, which pointed out the uniqueness of Surimeau. Surimeau is standing up to the Outokumpu model, which Dr. Franklin gave us, which is fundamentally, layman's language, 2 different mineralizing events occurring at the same place, but at different times. So, and I don't know, believe me, we will have academics figure this out, but the VMS was there and the ultramafic came in, or the ultramafic was there, the VMS came in. What we see with the mineralization is a nickel phase, so an ultramafic phase, which is nickel and a bit of cobalt. And we see the VMS, which is copper and zinc, or zinc and copper. We've done no platinum palladium group testing, which should be associated with the ultramafic. That's a question mark for later. But we see 2 distinct zonings, a mineralization, and we see a mixing zone where one melted the other fundamentally. Super exciting, completely unique in Canada. This is already attracting interest. When I speak to bankers and the such about Parbec, they're kind of like, yeah, okay, Parbec, let's get through Parbec. Talk to me about Surimeau. So the assays are coming in. We drilled, 3,500 meters with 15 holes, and then we went back because we couldn't get our permit for our other property. We went back and did another 4 holes for 1,000 meters or 800 meters. 800 meters. Anyway, the assay results are all coming. They're coming in. They're going to Dr. Franklin, who, along with our team of advisors, because he's not the only geologist, I did lay out the number of eyeballs on this in a previous press release. But Dr. Franklin is tracking the assays as they come in. We're doing full element analysis, and he's tracking the geochemistry. He's an expert in the VMS exploration and set the doctrine for how to do it. So he's the perfect guy to be advising us. And the nickel's a new wrinkle, but it's an exciting wrinkle given that everybody needs it. We're with road access and hydroelectric power on the property. And we only drilled 2.2 kilometers of 5 kilometers of known mineralization.
So the drill broke. What have you done about that one? Stop drilling?
Oh, that's a little drill. We're trying to support a small businessman who is trying to put a unique drill product together. So he got some drilling done. He's super cost effective, so it's not a risky proposition for us. The 3,500 meters was drilled with a conventional big NQ drill. The smaller one was a tracked drill. It's not ultimately what's clear though is it's not going to be able to go deep enough for us. We're going to go deep. We're on surface, and he can do some surface work for us. When he drilled 4 holes after our 3,500 meter program. 2 of them hit their target visually in that they gave us a stronger tenor or more visible mineralization with copper stringers and visible pentlandite. He got a bit deeper in the mineralized zone, but that was it. However, it's clear by those 2 results where the mineralization got more robust with depth, we're going to be going deep with this. This is not.
So back to conventional drilling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When?
When new drilling or when old drilling? The old drilling was done in May. New drilling. So the plan with Surimeau. I did announce we're going to do stripping. We do have our permit for that. We're lining up the contractors. We're going to strip about 600 meters between 2 of our fences of the drill holes we did in May. We're stripping between 2 outcrops, which are about 30 meters apart, and then we're going to extend along strike. We're going to chip a much bigger area, and that may lead to some additional outcrop discoveries. We'll see. We want to see fresh rock. So that's the first thing we're doing. We're going to commence that anytime now. And then we stop for high-powered rifle hunting season, which is the beginning of October. We're not going to, there's no reason to inconvenience everyone who hunts for food by being in the woods for the 3 weeks they have for their rifle season. We're going to fly some detailed drone geophysics. The mineralization is sulfides, so it does give us a magnetic signature. We're going to fly lower and tighter with the drone. That'll take place later this fall. I envision by the end of September, we'll have Parbec dealt with and it'll do what it'll do. Surimeau assays are going to take a bit longer to come out, partly because once the entire data set's available, it's going to Dr. Franklin to do what he does. So realistically, the market's not going to see those assays until later this fall. Once we have them, we'll also have Dr. Franklin and the rest of the team opining on vectoring in for drilling. We feel we're in the VMS stringer system. And in the ultramafic. So we're going to try and vector in a bit better. But we only drilled off 2.2 kilometers of 5 kilometers of mineralization within the Victoria West showing. So we will be doing some drilling along strike. And to answer your question in the most long-winded way humanly possible.
Thank you.
Late fall.
Late fall.
Probably.
Late fall. Okay. Okay. So, but talk to me about how you approach it. You describe the type of company you are. How do you approach this? Because VMS is expensive, right? So you're doing some trenching, do a bit more drilling. You talk about being self-funded, but in your presentation, you talk about 1.7 million cash. I get you've got security of I don't know, somewhere around 4 million. Okay. So there's some money there, but do you just allocate that to Surimeau, given you've got no other concerns that you need to spend money on at the moment, and say, we'll take it through to, I don't know, Q2 next year, and then we better start finding a strategic partner? Because it gets punchy, right? And if I look at 18 million, 20 million market cap company, that's hard to raise cheap capital to kind of move it forward. So what's the plan?
No, it's punishing to raise cheap capital. And I mean, I'm a large shareholder. I have no interest in unduly diluting shareholders just because I keep getting offered money, which I am. I keep saying no. I have to be careful how I say no, because you don't want to burn bridges, but I say no. So really, if we are successful in monetizing Parbec in the shorter term, that's going to inject a significant amount of capital, which is going to push your timeline out further. Sure. Point one.
So point one is, are there any serious discussions on Parbec? Have you got people doing diligence? Have you got people on the ground?
Yes.
You have. Okay. And would they be from any of these surrounding companies, or are we talking financiers who will, I don't know how they work?
I can't really tell you, but it's a mixed bag. You can ask, you can always ask, and it's the only way to get kissed is by asking, right?
Exactly.
It's a mixed bag. Financial types, developer, small mid-tier producers, that sort of thing. There's definitely interest out there. Will they come to a table with something that makes sense? Time will tell. And if it's not today, I'm pretty damn sure it'll happen. What we cannot control is the timeline. And it's a funny place for me, because it's funny for me. I mean, I'm entrepreneurial. I take risk without considering it risky because it's the environment I live in. But the bigger companies, they operate totally differently. They operate on their timeline. So I can't speak to the timelines. There's definitely interest. It's a slow moving train.
It is a slow moving train, but here's the two options you seem to have, or they certainly are outlying. It says, one, if we get a sale on Parbec, it's good times. We can allocate that to Surimeau, and it'll allow us to go further down that track, i.e. create more value, and then hopefully get more value for Surimeau if there's a monetizing event there. But the problem with Parbec is you've done what you've done, and now it's kind of sit back and wait for someone to catch your eye or to put an offer in, and you don't know whether it's this side of Christmas, next year, or the year after. That's the problem there. So more likely is you're going to have to do it with the cash you've got today, and either cash in the securities to continue to fund that, or you will have to take slightly more expensive money, or money that you don't necessarily want to take now to move it forward. So those are the two options on the table, aren't they?
Correct. And there are also different permutations of if we need to fund, what does Renforth funding look like? The securities is one option, as you correctly state. The other option, I'm speaking to another scientist who's got in the kind of mining space. There's government money available. There's government money to advance critical and strategic assets, both from the government of Quebec, which just announced a program which has a 4-year window and some very specific criteria, but there's federal money available as well. Governments around the world have acknowledged a few things about the critical and strategic metals. So to be clear, nickel, copper, and zinc are all either critical or strategic for infrastructure, EV pivoting, just making countries run. Around the world, if we look at the macro events, we're seeing borders rise. We're seeing countries are less friendly with each other. China's gobbling up raw material around the world. Governments are becoming aware of this. We saw the Canadian government block the TMAC, the original TMAC deal. Now, they didn't want the Chinese in our Arctic, but as well, they don't want the Chinese to have all of our natural resources. We're a natural resource country. So there's some keep it at home and start to fund it at home. The capital markets, the retail capital markets really have not stepped into the funding space yet. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. You'll start to see what you're starting to see in Europe specifically, specific to the battery metals issue, is you're seeing the end users stepping down the food chain and investing in the battery development, the raw materials delivery contracts. Industry is going to fund itself, is what we're starting to see happen in Europe. Far greater battery capacity in Europe, acknowledgement to the fact that the further you have to move these resources, the more expensive it gets. So a battery, a gigafactory in France is really hoping that there's a near Europe solution for the raw materials. They don't want to be buying it from Southern Africa if they don't have to. So North America is behind the stream on the EV build out, but we're still going to need copper, nickel, zinc for that world. And we're going to need those assets within proximity to where the batteries are being built, which is basically the central United States.
I get it, Nicole.
So,
but what do you do? What do you do now? Because those things take a long time to happen. They manifest over a period of time, right? What do you do now? You got this you got this opportunity today. You got the money you got today, and you got to work out when you bring in a strategic partner, if you bring in a strategic partner, or how do you fund it yourself?
Right. If a strategic partner comes in, which I do think is what's going to happen, to be clear, that's where that meandering answer was going. They'll come in once it's evidence that the asset is real, has scale to it.
Great. So when does that happen? Because that's a timeline that you can drive, because you can go hot and heavy with cash. and bring that time forward, or you've got to, be cognizant of what the market's doing at the moment, which is it's a little bit underside.
A little bit sloshy.
Right.
Yeah. So we drive the timeline by getting our initial results out, and there will be additional drilling. And I do think that we will start to get noticed on the basis of Surimeau. I do think that'll also start to eventually affect the share price. We'll come into a world of tears with regard to nickel or VMS. No VMS discoveries to speak of, no nickel discoveries to speak of. Once the share price rights itself, will I have to eat my words about funding? Perhaps, but it won't be as expensive to shareholders, and it'll allow the shareholders who aren't happy with that reality to exit. But no, we've got to all put on our, our big boy, big girl panties and say, no, a VMS is a big beast, and it's an expensive beast. It's a beast that has to be fed. We're not there yet. That's not happening in the next 3 to 6 months. We're going to piddle along and get our assays out and try to vector into seeing the deposit, refining our geophysics, and just really opening the door a bit wider on Victoria West. But hell yeah, it's a 260 square kilometer property. It's freaking huge. 6 different areas of mineralization. You could build a mine in the middle of it or a processing facility in the middle of it and just mine the little pods. Even if the 5 kilometers of Victoria West isn't connected to the 1 kilometer of Colony that's, 14 kilometers to the east on the same trend, right? Who knows? Lots of question marks. But assays coming out, visibility in the space, and additional drilling, I think we'll start to see it coming into the share price. Very interested bankers who acknowledge that I'm not going to fund the company at these levels for that asset. So, it's time again. It's just time. But it's opportunity. Time gives you opportunity, right? We're under the radar, and we're sitting on world-class battery metals assets. So ballsy words, I know, but the metal's there.